Hello, Mr. Pierluigi. This is Manish. I'm the student at MIT SCM program here. I belong to India, and I've been working in FMCG sector in India for quite some time before this program.
Okay. In which company have you?
I was working with Amway there.
Okay.
Amway.
Very good.
Hi, my name is Doreen Perez. I'm from Venezuela. I'm taking the GC-Log program here at MIT. I moved to Miami 3 months ago, so right now I can't answer the name of a company I'm working for because I'm not. But I used to work in a cemetery back in Venezuela.
Very good. Now, which MIT would be based in Miami, not in Boston. The initials would be the same, actually.
Yeah, the weather will be nicer.
Hello, my name is Yannis Solomakakis. I come from Greece, and I am studying in the MIT Saragossa logistics program that is based in Saragossa in Europe, so I'm more focused on the European market and the European, in general, perception. I have studied civil engineering, this is my background, but the past few years I was working in the family business that has to do with customs clearance, customs brokerage and freight forwarding back in Greece.
Very good.
And
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah, Mr. Luigi. So I'm Dachin, and I'm actually from Singapore. I'm taking the MIT program over in Shah Alam, Malaysia. And before this, I was doing risk management, market risk management, Golden Agri Resources.
We work very closely with them. One of our suppliers and partners.
Yeah.
Out of Indonesia, yeah. Very good.
So thank you for your talk a while ago, and actually some of the things that we would want to ask are linked to what you already spoke about. So I'll start with something which is very close to your heart, sustainability in Unilever. As you just mentioned, there was a time when sustainability and what you need to do as a company versus what business needs with respect to the growth came together, and you made a plan which goes together rather than in contrast to each other.
Right.
I still would want to ask, there would be some experience that you would have with respect to, if I call that tension or dialogue, argument with respect to spending on a green initiative versus the benefits that it will get the company. There has to be that learning curve. So how did you push your agenda with respect to sustainability initiatives in that, and whether you would say critical mass that Unilever has helped you in doing that?
Yes. So to start with the latter, absolutely. The size of Unilever is relevant in many markets where we operate, not only from a finished products point of view, but also from what we buy. And that size, for instance, in palm oil has been quite a key factor for us to create a movement in the industry to allow and to engage many companies to source palm oil sustainably. To your question about the tension between cost and sustainability, I have to admit that it not always works. To buy green palm certificates today, you have to pay premiums, and that doesn't necessarily help your P&L equation. But in the holistic way in which we manage our business, we generate enough savings to offset those additional costs. And at the same time, those savings are coming also from other sustainability initiatives. So when we start reducing the amount of waste that we have in our operations, when we start reducing the logistics distances that we travel, when we start reducing the manufacturing use of energy, these are all investments that we make that help the cost structure of our business, that also allows us to actually pay more for some specific commodities, as long as this is for a definitely concise amount of time. And the totality of the equation for us has been always very positive. So sustainability for Unilever is a way of doing business. It's not a project. It's not what companies believe is corporate social responsibility. It's a new business model that we're handling. And as such, we believe we can double the size of our business while being more profitable as a company and reducing the carbon footprint once we increase the social impact that we have out there.
Can we say that since the company takes green initiatives as a core, as a culture, it triggers a lot more concentration and focus on getting cost out in various different areas to, in a way, fulfill and ensure that the P&L still is healthy.
Absolutely. We all believe that this is a mission that we have in corporate life and also as individuals. And as such, every person works in small actions that can make a big difference. So whether it's in a factory, on a specific line where the operator is mindful about the kind of energy that is using, whether it's an R&D scientist that is redesigning our products, that it will use less packaging materials, whether it's our strategies that is redefining our manufacturing network. We all believe that one way or another, we can redesign the way in which we run our operations by providing cost benefits and at the same time reducing our carbon footprint. And that has become the way of doing business for us.
Yeah, Mr. Luigi. So I think I've got a follow-up question on the same theme. So, okay, you mentioned in your presentation that Unilever is a role model, attempting to influence competitors and to a certain extent suppliers to actually become sustainable. I think one of the obstacles would be that profitability is easy to measure, but the benefits from sustainability are somewhat more difficult to quantify. So how have you actually dealt with this problem? And also, I guess the next thing is how have you actually influenced competitors to actually become sustainable?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, the benefits of sustainability are not necessarily difficult to quantify if you know how to measure your end-to-end carbon footprint, for instance, as a business. Whether it's in the use of water, whether it's in the release of greenhouse gases. I mean, we have enough know-how and engagement with the academic world to actually measure that. And as such, our initiatives are publicly stated in our website. They're audited by external parties because we do have them in our annual reports. Yeah. And you can see, across all the different dimensions, which are more than 40, how we do measure those benefits along the lines of social, environmental, and business practices. So we engage with competitors in a way that they can only see the benefit of doing this together with us without necessarily conflicting on interests. The Consumer Goods Forum is one organization where all the CEOs from our sector get together and they discuss what the whole industry can do in the sustainability environment. And as such, there are commitments that we make there to stop sourcing from suppliers that are deforestating, for instance, which is just an example of areas where we don't compete and we can collaborate. We engage together or indirectly with NGOs who will also bring to our attention and to their attention some of the practices that we need to change. So whether it's directly or indirectly, we must collaborate not only with other private sector members, but also with the public sector as well. And it's only by creating public and private partnerships, governments, civil society, and other companies, that we can create that movement that will start changing the way in which we do business and setting new standards. So at the end, we can change the world. And that's what we're doing today. Yeah?
I had a question about how you assure that once the products are on customer hands, they will use them and they will dispose them in a way that is responsible. However, earlier today that you mentioned that you have worked in less packaging, less use of liquids when they need to use a product like soap, for example, and also less temperature need to wash clothes.
Exactly.
So I want to twist the question a little and ask you, for example, with products in aerosol presentations that are, let's say, difficult to dispose, are you planning some kind of reverse logistic? Do you have any plans for that? I know Lush, which is a personal care brand, they promote customers to bring back the packaging, and for each 5 packaging that they return, they will give 1 free item. So reverse logistics are always very complicated too, and I think that's a pretty easy way. So what are you planning about that?
There is no way we can do this with a big impact by ourselves. So yes, we do engage with our customers, the retailers out there, to ensure that somehow it is in their interest and in our interest to recycle more products. There are also industry associations which are created on purpose, like for PET, for instance, that are quite advanced in that sense. And there is an economic value there that has sustained that sector, that recyclability that we see today. So it is absolutely important that we do design products that are recyclable and not that can only be disposed to the environment. That is the case of aluminum, as you mentioned in your question, where there is clearly a value in the residual component of the aerosol once it's used. And the industry itself has developed well enough to allow recycled aluminum to be used in other sectors and even in our products as well, which I think is one of the elements of that circular economy that is slowly but surely being developed out there today. On our hand, there is also a big commitment to start investing on technologies that will allow microeconomies to be developed in the developing markets, for instance in sachets or flexible materials, to be reprocessed so you can generate fuel out of those or regenerate against polyethylene in a way that can be used in our factories or it can be reused in our products. So we do design our products to reduce the amount of material, to reuse it somehow in a way that at the end the holistic value of that equation remains sustainable. We're not 100% there yet because some of those equations are not economically feasible, but we are investing a lot in this sense because we do believe that there is value for us and there is value obviously for our planet if more companies do so.
Would consumer education, educating consumer would be a key piece there? Is Unilever doing something on that?
Yeah, we don't feel to be so arrogant as to use the word educating consumers. What we do is to create the conditions for them to see the value of recyclability. When you deal with a lady that is doing her laundry in the south of India, you know that for her, the environment is not as important as it is her family. And in those occasions where we redesign our products so she can see the convenience of using less water. So she has to walk less to get the water out of the well that is in the town or even hours away from where she lives. So for her, sustainability is about using less water, spending less time, having the high quality products that will allow her to fulfill the family needs. And although we don't communicate sustainability for her, but only convenience, at the end it's an equation of sustainability.
I've seen those ads in our television back home.
Yes.
So that's part of what I called education. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
I would like to ask you about, you mentioned before that there are some initiatives and some efforts in reducing the energy use during the manufacturing process for the production of the products. Could you mention some measures in order to become more efficient in terms of energy?
Absolutely.
Using less energy or reusing energy from electricity for heating, or what exactly do you do in your plans?
Yeah, so two answers to your question. First is the kind of energy we use, and second is how we use it. The kind of energy can be from renewable or non-renewable sources. 27% of the energy that we use in Unilever today in our industrial system comes from renewable sources, which is wind, solar, water, and so on.
Geothermal energy? Do
So
you use any geothermal energy coming from?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So we have combined heat and energy production technologies in our factories. We have boilers which are actually producing energy out of biomass and not necessarily from non-renewable fuel fossils. And that is a trend that we have started, where we're aiming at least to reach 40% of the total of the energy that we use in Unilever that can come from from renewable sources of generation.
So you are in front of EU that has, in front of European Union that has set the 2020 target for 2020. So you are using 27
yes,
already.
Around the world.
And you are
yes.
aiming to 40%.
Yes. So every new factory that we create, and we have opened about 25 factories until last year and 33 in total in 2015 in the last 5 years, has the mission to actually reduce at least by half the kind of greenhouse gases and carbon footprint that it generates. So we're investing in new technologies that are making our manufacturing process much more efficient, and at the same time is helping the environment. So that's an and equation where you can invest capital, better technologies, lower use of energy, lower cost, a more profitable business. Now, on the other hand, it's also about how we use the energy. And in that sense, we have embarked in a program that is quite amazing, because we are now having sensors and meters along every single of the lines that we have in many of our factories that are providing the visibility to our engineers of the amount of water and the amount of energy that we use. So they're much more aware and conscious that in many times of the year, when there is no production, you can minimize the use of energy or the disposal of water. That alone has generated a significant amount of reduction of use of energy. So the question is use and sources and cost. And when you can reduce, you can make them renewable, and when you can actually buy them at a lower cost, you end up having a great equation, once again, that helps the environment and helps your business at the same time.
Also, I would like to ask something about the social responsibility. You said that you are trying to source environmentally friendly raw materials, and also from suppliers that do not use child abuse, child labor, or women abuse. But how can you trace back the suppliers if we are talking about fourth tier or third tier suppliers, so the supplier of the supplier of your direct supplier? How do you trace back the supply chain in order to find whether he uses or child labor or abuse of children or women?
Yeah, very, very good question, and very difficult to answer, to be honest. We have about 10,000 suppliers that are only engaged in raw and packaging materials. If you start looking for services and other areas, it's hundreds of thousands. So it is almost materially impossible to measure the third and even second, sometimes second, third, fourth tier of the suppliers that our suppliers use. But we have engaged with them in what we call a responsible sourcing program, where they have committed to work with us in setting the standards, which along the lines of the United Nations Human Rights for Businesses, which is called the Ruggie Framework, sponsored by the United Nations. And it is in that framework where we have asked our key partners and our suppliers to commit to this program as a way to have a business with us. So we empower them, and we randomly also check whether they are actually respecting these new standards. And of course, it's not easy to do. We have found cases of human slavery indirectly linked to some of our customers still, or our suppliers as well. We have stopped doing businesses with them. Every time there is evidence that is brought by any organization that verifies the fact that the human rights are not being respected, we first investigate and validate those sources. And if that is the case, we actually engage directly with the supplier to say, this is not how we do business. If you don't stop immediately these practices, we're going to stop doing business with you. And we engage with them in what I really call an education program in some cases, whether it's linked to social impact or human rights or environmental practices, is something that we feel very proactive to do.
In our countries, there is a common response when someone proposes a green project, because they don't see the benefit, economic benefit, or they see it as an unnecessary cost. What advice will you give us in order for us to go there and change that mindset?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we do believe that we're in a stage of our history today where the cost of doing nothing is actually higher than the cost of investing for a better planet. Climate change is creating a significant amount of disruption in the way companies do business today. And that has become so evident that it has actually represented a must and a new way of doing business for many companies. You have surely read about the COP20 event in Lima, which happened only a few weeks ago, where many governments have now engaged in and committed to new targets to protect the planet in the long term. I personally don't believe there is enough time for us to act. It's possibly very late. But we have to keep working very hard on this to make people understand that unless they change the way in which they set their policies, we bring evidence in terms of cost and also the damage this creates for governments, for civil society, nothing will happen. The good news is that a movement is there, and I can see more and more news which are encouraging us for the future. But you have, as much as I do, a big responsibility on your shoulders to ask the right questions, to challenge the right organizations, to work for a company that you can feel is truly committed to this space. Because at the end, it's about your future. As I said before, 10, 20 years ago, we were telling each other this was for the next generation. Today, this is for us. This is not for our children anymore. So unless we do something about it, we're going to pay the consequences for this.
Okay. Mr. Pierluigi, I've got a question regarding supply chain. Curious about something. You mentioned during the presentation that there are some challenges that you face, but at the same time you have got a great team. So, all of these challenges that you face, would there be one or two that tend to occupy more of your mind space, or that you tend to pay more attention to because of whatever reasons? And yeah,
I occupy my mind in understanding how to make our business more successful as a member of the executive board. And I believe that's one of my many responsibilities. But I do also occupy a lot of my time and my mind in talking to my team members, in discussing with them how they're doing, what can I do to help and create the right environment for them to exploit their potential. They come to me only when they need help. I hate micromanaging people. For me, my role is more an inspiring role and a leadership role than a manager role. And as such, I do expect to be called when they need guidance, when they need support, when they need advice, and when they need to share their wins and their failures. And it is in that space where I have my biggest rewards, because I do see people feeling passionate and inspired by the way I work with them. Yeah. And that is such a virtuous circle that allows you to grow as an individual as your people grow as well. So I do believe that in order to succeed as a leader, you have to invest time in training your people so they can leave the company one day. But at the same time, treat them so well that they never want to leave. And that's what I do every day.
Just talking about business success, we have seen a lot of economic turmoil in the past few years, and Unilever's strategy has been focused on emerging markets more than obviously saturated markets in developed markets. Now we're seeing things like China, countries like China, India, Brazil as well, slowing down from what they were. And Unilever, if I'm not wrong, the strategy has been to open factories on their own more often than not. So you have already put in capex, already put in some commodity management practices at the scale that you are. So my question is whether these economies that are like stagnating, like Europe, Japan, US, and degrowth in India, China, Brazil, how does that impact your capex decisions? Whether amortizations are a problem? Do you think these needs to be managed at your level, at an executive level,
Yes.
obviously? And is there a change in the supply chain setup that you see has to happen now?
Absolutely.
Than last few years?
That's a real great question. So first of all, we make investments for the long term. When we open a new factory, we don't do it for like 3 to 5 years, but we do it for 20, 30, 40 years, if no more. We do still today celebrate factories that were open about 125 years ago. And so our commitment when we put capital is for the long term. Now, economies go in cycles, and clearly you have to adjust the way in which you deploy capex so you don't create an additional burden in your cost structure when your volumes come down and your turnover, your sales don't go as expected. So we calibrate that. So until last year, we were investing between 4 to 4.5% of our sales into capital expenditure. We have publicly said that in the current economic climate, this is not necessarily affordable anymore. So we have brought those investments down on a range between 3.5 to 4%. And as such, we're now monitoring more capacity globally. That's a good example of where you leverage scale. We ask ourselves twice, do we need this capacity? Can we leverage this by relying on the availability in other markets so we can export more between countries? So we have adjusted the way in which we allocate more capacity in light of this economic slowdown, but remain very true to ourselves that if we have to grow in Africa, for instance, and we need to open 6 new factories, we would do so in a sort of intelligent way, but without necessarily thinking that there is no future in these markets. The demographics, the economic conditions, and the growth potential is so big that even though there is a slight slowdown, we believe we're building competitive advantage by investing today for tomorrow.
So, in terms of capacity, as you mentioned, I could say from what you said that you invest more in flexibility in your plants and your product lines rather than on increasing the capacity in overall. Mm-hmm. Is that the case?
No, actually, it depends of the product category and the portfolio that we produce. So when you're dealing with sort of commoditized categories like home care powders, for instance, you want to maximize your capacity at the possible highest level, and because your margins or your cost equation is very thin. So at the end, you need to really squeeze your assets as much as possible. When you deal with high margin products, you want to keep capacity available because not selling them, not having enough capacity to produce, creates more damage to your margins than optimizing your cost equation alone. So it's a strategy that we do on a product category by product category level. If the products travel, we end up relying on capacity more regionally or globally. If they don't travel, we invest locally, and we try to keep the capacity available in a way that our products are always on the shelf, because we grow as a business if our own shelf availability is there.
Also, I would like to ask something about the food product category. How do you respond to the changing diet habits the past few years towards more healthy lifestyles, towards biological food products? Do you consider changing your products to become, apart from environmental and socially friendly, also to follow the trend of yes, like biological food or food that has less cholesterol, or I mean the chemical composition, the synthesis?
Yes. So we're working very, part of our sustainable living plan also includes the importance and the need to reformulate our products so we can make them much healthier. Just to give you an example, in ice cream, for instance, for children, we have publicly committed not to have any ice cream that has more than 100 calories, for instance. We have reduced significant amount of salt and other non-healthy ingredients in our products in a way that they can also be value and good for consumers. We do believe margarine has a much healthier profile than butter, for instance, and as such, we keep supporting that business. So having a sustainable business also means having a sustainably and healthy portfolio, and that's what we're doing right now. In terms of biological or not, there are very different points of view in that sense. People believe that organic means healthier. I personally believe that's wrong. I believe that that's a fallacy and a change that will happen soon when people will start understanding that the fact that it's organic doesn't mean anything compared to a product that is produced more under the standards of the past. But we do at the end what consumers want us to do, because at the end we're here to serve them, and we can only grow if they appreciate our portfolio. If they want non-GMO in our products, we will have non-GMO in our products. If they don't care, and we believe that's something that helps the agricultural practices and reduces less of the use of resources, then we'll use GMO, depending on those conditions. Yeah.
And I wanted to ask, now that we're talking about changes in different markets and the challenges, how has Unilever faced the challenges of its business in Venezuela, since we have all these obstacles like exchange control, supply limitations, workforce limitations? I'm sure that your supply chains have to make big changes in order to face that and to still be in the market. You have an ice cream market there that I understand is amazing. So,
Rico, yes.
yeah, what have you done in Unilever to face that?
So in the past, we used to rely more on a regional supply chain for Venezuela, which was making our business much more profitable. We realized that that was not a sustainable way of doing business. So we have started using more local third-party manufacturers to be more locally present, because the demand is quite significant. The currency value is devastating and the inflation rates are very concerning. But we're committed to Venezuela for the long term, as much as we were committed to Indonesia when Suharto was in power. And today we have a very powerful business over there. So the strength of Unilever is that we do define strategies for the long term. And we don't opportunistically enter and exit a market based on political conditions. Now, it is tough to do business in Venezuela today. But we do believe that by investing locally, we can have a much more successful business. And your example on ice cream is the best one, where we're now opening a new factory in Venezuela, believe it or not, that will allow us to grow by multiples our ice cream business that has a beautiful brand. And that's just an example of how much we're committed for the long term.
Just nothing to do with the whole circle. What is the sense of driving a Formula One or a Lamborghini, as you mentioned before? Because I love speed, that's why. But
yes.
I've never had the chance. Only bikes, only fast bikes.
Yeah.
More affordable.
So I like motor racing for two reasons. One is because it's a very competitive environment, and you truly learn what it takes to win in an environment where a second makes all the difference, and it's actually quite a big amount of time. So it is about being extreme in your competitive levels, but also excelling thanks to an amazing individual talent that the pilot has on one side, but also an incredible amount of teamwork that is behind whoever is racing the car. And that combination, in my view, is something that you can also apply to business. And it can be very inspiring for many, not only for those who are fans of this Formula One environment, but also those who really want to learn what it takes to win. So I was born with a passion to win. And for me, racing, it's all about exposing yourself. It's about learning your weaknesses. It's about investing and training on developing your own skills. And that is something that you have to apply, and you're doing today in MIT, but you have to keep doing that in every single day of your life. It also helps you to remain humble, because there are always others who are much better than you. And you can always win in life if you learn from your mistakes, if you learn from the understanding of what is what you need to learn and what you need to do in order to be a better pilot, a better professional. And it's in that sense that I always say to myself that you have to expose to areas of your world and my world that make you very uncomfortable. Because it's only there that you grow as an individual. When you do things for the first time, when you feel that you're getting yourself outside your own comfort box. And when you do that, you end up learning that you have a lot much more to do. And it's by committing to yourself and your long-term future that you can actually be a much better professional. So that word gives me a lot of lessons, and I believe that is one of the very inspiring sectors where we learn how to do better business, but also have fun. And at the end, life is very short, and we have to do things that we like to do in order to be happy for the long term. Yeah.
Thank you.
So thanks again. Thank you. Thank you very much. All the best. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nice to meet you. Mucho gusto.